he's showing through the way that he debates, I am aggressive. I am aggressive. I don't take any prisoners. I don't, I'll say what I want. And of course, that was in the context of a discussion about standing up to Putin. So, in a sense, I mean, depending on who the audience is, but we can imagine, I think that's probably quite an effective way of doing it, although to a lot of people it will come across as quite rude and quite impolite.
On Tuesday, presidential candidates Donald Trump and Kamala Harris will face each other live in their first TV debate. Kamala Harris is no stranger to debates herself. They've played a key part in her career, from her run for California Attorney General to her ascent to vice presidency. And Trump's clashes with Biden were particularly memorable. Now, Biden, of course, is out of the picture. What can we expect from the former president's debating style? Let's speak to former world debating champion and barrister at Essex Court Chambers, Jeremy Brier KC. Good morning to you, Jeremy.
Good morning, Chloe.
So, what would you say, first of all, are the most important things for politicians to do, particularly Trump and Kamala Harris in this case, on Tuesday, to get their message across? Because we were speaking earlier on to strategists for Democrats and Republicans, and they were saying this is very much speaking to the undecided voters, the 4%. Yeah. It's not the base, it's those people. So what should their strategy be?
Well, I think that first point's really important. You've got to know your audience. And if 40% of the room have made up their mind one way and 40% the other way, you are talking to the 20% that haven't made their mind up. And so you've got to tailor your message accordingly. And they'll both have completely different ideas for how they do that, I imagine, because they're both trying to create a different type of image and impression. So if you are like Donald Trump and you are the great disruptor and the man that sort of does things differently and doesn't want to be thought of as the usual politician, you won't want to play by the rules. You'll want to interrupt. You'll want to disrupt. You'll want to speak over Kamala Harris. But if you're someone that wants to show you're more of a professional, prosecutorial, safe pair of hands like Kamala Harris, you're going to adopt a different strategy. You're going to want to be more refined and dignified. And I think the interesting point there is that your debating style so often becomes a kind of external representation of what you are actually like as a person and the way you intend to govern.
I want you to have a listen to some clips which we've got of previous debates. If you could maybe critique them, it would be really useful. Because I'm just fascinated because you look at this from a different angle to us. So this is Kamala Harris versus Mike Pence, both as vice presidents. Let's have a listen.
Joe Biden said twice in the debate last week that he's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts. That was tax cuts that gave the average working family $2,000 in a tax break every single year. Senator,
that is absolutely not true.
Is he only going to repeal part of the Trump tax cuts?
If you don't mind letting me finish, we can then have a conversation, okay?
Please.
Okay. Joe Biden will not raise taxes on anyone who makes less than $400,000 a year. He has been very clear about that. Joe Biden will not end fracking. He has been very clear about that.
Okay, what do you make of that?
I think the way that Pence started, he has a tone that's very authentic and quite sincere. He has quite a calm way of speaking to the audience and to the public. What we then get is Kamala Harris speaking over him. I really don't like the way she says, if you don't mind letting me finish, and that sort of, we hear this a lot in debates. The public really don't like it when you start getting this, what you might call a meta debate about how you're debating, and they go on and on at each other about, well, you're talking over me, no, you're interrupting me, get on with it. But when he does get on with it, it's actually quite good. It's quite stilted and it does sound a bit pre-prepared because she's using this style of, he will do this, he will do that, he will do the other. But she does have the facts at her fingertips. She is on message. So she's getting something across. It's a bit stilted, but it is getting her point across. And I mean, I think what you have to also remember is that they're very, very interested in the clipping of these debates for social media. I mean, I've worked with thousands of school children, university students around the world debating, and it's a much more formal, rigorous a sort of almost academic style, which you know is a sort of loads of parents listening and will know that their kids go through this and they prepare well for their debates and stuff like that. When we're dealing with these TV debates, these set pieces that prime ministers and presidents do, they are not A, playing by the rules in quite the same way, but B, they're not just interested about winning that debate. They're interested about winning the social media battle that follows, which is, can they get that perfect clip to go viral on Twitter? Because that's really who they're talking to.
No, absolutely. Okay, so that was Kamala Harris and Mike Pence in 2020, so 4 years ago. Let's wind the clock back even further to Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton in a TV debate. Let's have a little listen to this.
From everything I see, has no respect for this person.
Well, that's because he'd rather have a puppet as president of the United States.
No puppet.
And it's pretty clear.
You're the puppet.
It's pretty clear you won't admit
No, you're
that
the
the
puppet.
Russians have engaged in cyber attacks against the United States of America.
Okay, your assessment of that one, Jeremy.
It's quite short, but I did pick up the fact that, you know, what I was saying earlier about Trump reflecting his style in his debating, which I think is really important to understand. He talked over her. I remember, Chloe, I don't know if you remember this and can't see it, but he was actually sort of sidling up to her, wasn't he?
He was prowling round her. It was horrible.
Prowling round her. Yeah, I think that's probably a better way of putting it. But I think the point about this is he's showing through the way that he debates, I am aggressive. I am aggressive. I don't take any prisoners. I don't, you know, I'll say what I want. And of course, that was in the context of a discussion about standing up to Putin. So, you know, in a sense, that I mean, depending on who the audience is, but we can imagine, I think that's probably quite an effective way of doing it. Although to a lot of people, it will come across as quite rude and quite impolite. On the other hand, those are probably the people that aren't going to vote for him anyway. So again, it's about knowing your audience. But just that repeated sort of snarling, I mean, at one level, I find it a bit distasteful to listen to. On the other hand, I can sort of see how if you're then asking the question, who do you think is the tougher and more likely to stand up to power, you might end up finding that the audience votes for Trump. Hillary wasn't quite able to get her sort of, well, in that tiny clip anyway, to get into her stride.
Yeah. Jeremy, I could speak to you for so long. It's absolutely fascinating. I'm sure we will get you back on, if we may, throughout the course of the debates that they have and sort of get your assessment of how it's going. But thank you so much for your time this morning.
Anytime.
Take
Thanks.
care. That is Jeremy Brier KC. He's a barrister at Essex Court Chambers. He's a former world debating champion as well. And I just love the way he just dissects it all for us and just gives us a sense of what is going on.
Looking forward to the debate. I'm very much in two minds about whether I stay up all night for it. It's because I can. It's one of those
Well, I was
rare
going to say
moments
you're not necessarily working early the next day, are
so
you?
I'm TBC because I do like a full night's sleep, as we all know. But yeah, so it's going to be a huge night. Times Radio will build up to it. We'll cover it. We'll react to it, of course, because it turns out TV debates in a US presidential context are quite consequential, despite what people may have said in the past. There's already been one quite consequential debate this year, and so this could be another one, and Times Radio is the place to get coverage of it.